Hi, my name is Keith Cooper of Northlight Images. This is just a quick overview of a new lens I've got for testing. It's the Laowa 55mm macro tilt shift. Now this was announced recently along with a 100mm macro lens, and I'll probably have a look at that later next year. But I've just been sent this one here. This is the 55mm f2.8. It's a tilt shift lens, 10 degrees of tilt, 12mm of shift, although I've got the version of it with the medium format G mount for the Fuji GFX, there's GFX 100S on it here. The same lens, it has sufficient image circle to work on 35mm and on the 33x44 sensor of this, the GFX. So this is like small medium format. And one thing to note on this is that the amount of shift you can have on 35mm frame is 12mm of shift, although it's recommended not to use more than 8mm of shift on the medium format. That's because you've already got a larger sensor area, so moving it is going to hit the edge of the image circle much quicker. Now I'll have lots more details about that when I do some proper testing of it, but this, I've just set it up here. Incidentally, I'm also going to test this with the camera in 35mm crop mode, so I can see what the performance is like on a 35mm sensor. So this lens is available for RF mount. It's also mount Z mount for Sony as well, and L mount as well, if I remember rightly. The lens itself, now why have I got it set up particularly like this? I just wanted to show an example of how much tilt of the image plane, of the focal plane, you get at full tilt. Now this is set up, it has a foot, a detachable foot with an Arca style mount on it, so useful attachment there. What I've done is I've just tilted the camera. Now, camera tilt, lens tilt, the two are broadly interchangeable. I will be looking at this more when I do the sort of more detailed reviews and testing of this, but lens tilt, camera tilt, sensor tilt, are quite similar in their effects. In particular, what I've done here is I've lined the lens up, I've pointed it at a subject, and then I've tilted the camera. Now that's quite easy because the lens here is standing on the foot, and so I've moved that. This is equivalent to lens tilt. Now, because some people will say, yes, but there are all sorts of differences. Yes, if you're coming to this from the point of view of using larger format cameras, 5x4s, larger cameras than that, then there is a whole complete different terminology people use. But I deliberately use a terminology that I find more helpful to people coming at lenses like this, both using shift and using tilt, from a 35mm or smaller camera background. Incidentally, and I cannot not mention this, I've written what is still, as far as I know, the only book about how to use tilt shift lenses. Very late Christmas present for someone if you haven't thought of it. Should be available in all good bookshops, but I'll put a link in the notes for it. But I'm obliged to, since I wrote it, to mention that it's still available. But anyway, this, as I've set it up, I've got this lens at full tilt. And the thing to notice is that even though it's at full tilt, the image plane here, the plane of focus, it's not tilted that much. And this is one of the key warnings I want to make for anyone who's confused by the macro bit. Yes, it's working at 1:1 here, so yes, it's macro, but tilt at close-up working distances like this is very small. So if you thought you were going to be able to move the focal plane all over the place, no. It doesn't work that way. That's as much as you can get. Now, if I move this further away, I will be able to get more tilt. I'll show some examples of this, but this is classic sort of tilt lens use. Now, I'll also be having a look at how to focus the lens on an arbitrary plane in front of the lens. That's a little bit more difficult. I mean, yes, I've described it in the book, and I've got articles about it and a video about it, but I want to have another look at it with this just to see how well that works. And that's something where you make use of the fact that the lens here, and I'll just stop this now, pick the lens up, As I say, the lens fully tilted there. I'll put it back to nothing. Now you can change, you can move the camera relative to the lens, you can rotate it, you can rotate the shift versus tilt axis by up to 90 degrees, and of course the whole thing will rotate in the mount, so I can have it like that. I can turn the whole thing round. There are little buttons on it. There's a button at the back here that allows the camera relative to the mount to move. There are no electronics in this, so it's fully manual. You have to set your aperture, you have to set everything, and there is no EXIF data reported back. Now I've set 55mm on the image stabilizing on this, so I'll be able to use image stabilization with it handheld. But we've got the adjustments. The foot detaches, just needs a bit of tightening up there. Got all the usual tilt shift adjustments. It's a solidly built lens. I mean, if I compare it with what is massive lens, this is the Fuji 30mm tilt shift. This is without doubt one of the best lenses I've ever tested in terms of actual using, which is why I've got one for architectural style work. This gives you the equivalent field of view on the medium format sensor here of around about 24mm. So 30mm, larger sensor, wider field of view. So this gives a view broadly equivalent to my Canon TSE 24, which I've used for years, which I use a lot, and it's huge. Make my arm ache just holding it like that. That's got a foot but no arca bit on it. That's a very nice lens to use. The two of these together would be excellent. Why do I say this excellent? Because I have also here, and this is in what's a TSE frame, which allows me to move the camera to not get parallax, whereas I can use the foot here with tilt on these. Using this is just for shift. So this mounts into the camera, into the tripod head, and this is a Canon TSE 50. Now I've got an EF to G mount adapter on the back here. This is auto stop down. All the electronics are there with this. Likewise with this, there are no electronics in this. The electronics for this one works. So this is a TSE 50. So fractionally shorter focal length than this. This one, I actually bought one of these specifically to go with this camera. And I will be looking at how the TSE 50 on the GFX compares with the Laowa on the GFX. Focal differences are minimal. This one here, I found if I don't use too much shift, it works very well. In fact, this particular one, this gives me a focal length of 30 odd millimeters, 35 millimeters, equivalent field of view. This is a very nice lens to use on this. That's why I got it. But I'll come back to all the various comparisons and what does what and things like that when I do a proper review of it. But this is really just to note that, yep, I've got one here. If you've got any specific questions, either email me or leave a question in the notes. We'll be taking this out in the new year. So I will be looking at it for macro use as well. And particularly the fact that with this, you can set the tilt axis to any way you like. So rather than, it's tilt and a direction as how I would normally define that. But anyway, yeah, very nice bit of kit. It's heavy. If lens quality was based on weight, this would be one of the better ones I've tested for recent years. It's not a lightweight one. So there you go. That's the 55mm f2.8 macro from Laowa. Thanks for watching.